Well, hey there. Welcome into the Big Z Breakdown. If you're new here, my name's Mike Zanetti, and I love talking football, but on this channel, I haven't posted since week 1. It's already week 8. We're halfway through the season. I've kind of been more doing shorts on TikTok, on Instagram. I'm also working full-time at Wave 15 News as a digital anchor. So, football's the passion. Football is the thing we're going to talk about. So, week 8, DraftKings, some DFS plays. We got fantasy lineups. Those are always so much fun to do. But we're going to run through a whole lineup as to, who do you play? Because you get some lucky weeks where you pick the unknown player that just goes off like Orlando Gadskin last week. Thursday Night Football caught a touchdown. And that's the thing. Key for this week is it's National Tight Ends Day. So I really don't hate if you have two guys in at the tight end and the flex. This is kind of the team that I'm rolling with. And, honestly, I'm not too caught off guard by it. I'm actually a pretty big fan of it. And, looking at what do we do for this week, I will clear out this lineup and go through, what do we do for this week? Because it's evident that there's a lot of players out for this week. You look at the fact that, hey, Lamar Jackson, no longer available. That's definitely not going to be great. So as for this week, let me clear this lineup out and kind of run through the first thing first, the quarterback stacks. There's a lot of weird games this week. Giants at the Eagles. I don't mind Jackson Dart. One interesting thing, if you're looking for like a under the radar, somebody who's not going to have a lot of ownership, Kirk Cousins is starting for the Atlanta Falcons. So that is something that I would consider, right? Cousins, Pitts, Bijan, and London. I know it's a lot of Atlanta Falcons, but the Miami Dolphins defense is terrible. So maybe you could do something like this. You go out with Kirk. You go for Bijan at running back. It's just a lot of Atlanta Falcons. And I mean, I've seen lineups work in the past before where they have heavy people on one team. You have the triple stack. I probably would take London out just because he's a little banged up. Maybe just maybe they keep the ball on the ground and it's a run heavy game script considering it's Kirk Cousins. Do they really trust him? But honestly, I don't hate that right there as like the three main players to build around. And then as for running backs this week, we'll continue on with our quarterback stacks in terms of what kind of lineups can you create for this week to find value, right? Last week it was kind of Herbert, Gadsden, Keenan Allen had a monster week last week. So that was kind of the main three players you needed to have in your lineup. And I had a couple guys go pretty nuclear, but again, you need to have everyone in there in order to get up to the top of these tournaments, and it's so difficult. So Jonathan Taylor, great matchup against Tennessee. That is a division game, so it's not like I trust the Titans to win, but they could keep it closer than expected. Again, Taylor was the running back one last week, so I wouldn't be expecting anything crazy. Here are the names of the week. Bijan Robinson. Everyone's going to own him. Obviously, if you're looking at it on paper, the Dolphins have the worst defense in the league. Most people playing these tournaments know that in these lineups. So if you're going to go with Bijan, it's definitely not a terrible idea. He's in the lineup, obviously. 8,800, pretty expensive, but he's going to have 25, 30 points. Even though he might be 30, 40% owned and he might be chalk for the week, I feel like you still have to keep him in the lineup because he's that running back that's going to get you 30. If you have a running back that's chalk and they're only going to get you 20, if that's what you believe in, then you probably don't have to play him. But the other guys that I'd be looking at, Taylor, McCaffrey's a no-go for me just because the Texans' run defense is just as good as his pass. Saquon Barkley is so interesting to me. And the reason I say it is because he just had his man, everything's falling off the table. He just had his worst week of the season. 5 fantasy points last week. So if we're taking a look at Barkley, his game log, 18, 17, 8, 7. I feel like no A.J. Brown. It's just really interesting to me. Are they going to be that pass heavy after Jalen Hurts just threw for 300 yards? They just played the Giants. They know them really well. Just 2 weeks ago, they're going to try and stop Jackson Dart as best they can. And I think the Giants could keep it close, but the one thing they couldn't do was stop the run. Saquon Barkley had his best game statistically against the Giants. If we go ahead and take a look at his log again, the Giants game, week 6, when they lost 34-17, 12 carries, but 60 yards. So averaging 4.8 yards a carry, his second highest this season. The other game was against Denver, only 6 carries, 30 yards. So although the Eagles scheme does not really get Barkley involved, and it's a little bit frustrating to have Barkley on your rosters, I will say that it is a good value play, considering that probably nobody's going to own him this week. So I like Barkley, even though I was heavy on him last week. Again, I didn't make a video last week. Haven't made a video since week 1, but trying to be more consistent. Anyway, with Saquon, he is having a really good matchup. And if he does have 18 carries, he could easily have 86 on the ground and a touchdown, be involved in the pass game. So I am a big fan of Saquon this week. And normally, the funny thing is when I make my shorts and starts and sits on TikTok and everything, last week, Barkley was in my starts of the week. And every week, I'm always a week early, and a player burns me where it's like, oh my gosh, how did Barkley get 5 points? And it's like, most people are like, I'm never putting Barkley in my fantasy lineups again, at least for DFS purposes. And I feel like I have to go back to him, right? He's still that talented guy. I understand, like, the bad beat. Like, if you have a 4-leg parlay and that fourth leg, the guy gets, like, 5 yards, and then you're like, I don't want him in any of my parlays. And then the week after, he has, like, 120 and 2. It's just so weird how that stuff works. So, 2 weeks in a row, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Barkley has like a 2-touchdown game, because that's what happened with Judkins. I was heavy on Judkins the week before they played the Dolphins, and he busted. He just did nothing. So, and then the week after, 3 touchdowns against the Dolphins. So I really like Saquon this week. He's just an under the radar play. The other big names, Javonte Williams. I mean, it might not be the biggest name because it's a tough Denver defense, but that's a revenge game for him. He is going to want to tear up his old team on the ground. And I don't think the Broncos are anything crazy defensively. They are in the top 10 run defense-wise. But again, not somebody that I'm like, okay, you need Javonte in your lineups. Let's keep scrolling here. Cam Skadbu. Skadbu's not bad. I mean, the Eagles' defense has not been anything like they were last year. But again, I don't know if the Giants will be in that game. The other names that I like, obviously Jonathan Taylor, we talked about him. But I'm going all the way down here with my mouse is at Derrick Henry is 6,000. And that's why I like the 3 running backs this week. And if you're nervous about Barkley, go ahead and put Henry in there. Don't make my influences change your lineup this week. But if you're looking at a cheap guy, Henry has not performed, and I feel like he is so due for a monster game this week against a Bears defense that is just depleted. Ashton Genty had 3 total touchdowns. This could be the running back of the week. I know there's no Lamar, but honestly, that kind of helps Henry's case because they are going to have to lean on him heavily for offensive production. And I actually think the Ravens win this game being at home. They're getting most of their players back. They've kind of been banged up on defense, the worst defense in the league. I put air quotes around it because they just haven't been able to be healthy. So now with all the players coming back, I actually really like Henry this week. So those are my 3 to 4 names. The other name that if you really want to start a running back, I think Chase Brown against the Jets, that's another good matchup. The Bills are not a good run defense, but again, the split there with Hubbard and Dowdle, I don't like that. I would stay away from the Texans defense, all those top defenses like the Falcons run defense isn't bad. So again, Achane wouldn't be a bad play, but I feel like if you're going to go for the cream of the crop, who's the running back that's going to get me the top fantasy points of the week? I think it comes down to these 4 names, and it's Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, and Chase Brown. Maybe, just maybe, James Cook is up there, but I really like the Panthers' run defense and what they've been able to show for this week. Christian McCaffrey has a tough matchup. Achane, maybe, but the Dolphins are going to be down. I mean, just scrolling through this, the only other name that I could see being in the conversation, Rachaad White. I mean, it's a division matchup, so I think it's going to be a tough game. But again, no Bucky Irving, no Mike Evans. Maybe I don't mind Emeka Ibuka. Ibuka could be the guy at wide receiver, but I'm a little bit iffy on wide receivers this week. I'm not too sure, and that's kind of where I look at the Andy Dalton stack to where it's like, maybe it's Leggett this week. So Leggett definitely had a good week last week. 5 of his 7 attempts were from Dalton. So Dalton went 4 of 7 from completions, and 5 of his attempts were at Leggett. So needless to say, Leggett's his number 1 guy. But as far as other options, if you really like this Kirk lineup, maybe it's a Kirk to Mooney that could work. I'm just not the biggest fan of the Falcons' pass offense. So, again, if we're going to go back to the start of things in terms of finding the right quarterback, I don't hate Josh Allen. But, again, that can get expensive. Jalen Hurts, not a big fan. Dak Prescott, could be. As far as the top quarterbacks this week, this is going to sound really weird. But Tyrod Taylor is out. Justin Fields, I know, he's not very good. Yes, I know, it's the Jets. Yeah, believe me. But we could see some value here with Justin Fields against the Cincinnati Bengals. You see all this green right here? 25th against quarterbacks. They do not play well. So again, I know there's no Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall is questionable as well. Josh Reynolds is out. But maybe, just maybe, you go Fields to Mr. Mason Taylor. And guess what? Last week as well, I said, hey, let's go ahead and start Mason Taylor. What does he do? He does nothing in the tight end room. Now, I said Mason and Barkley. I only went like 4 for 7 on my actual starts last week, which was very bad. But the funny thing is, Fields didn't throw him the ball. Taylor was not involved at all. So I'm definitely not leaning on Fields. If you're going to go with any contrarian play, it has to be Andy Dalton to Xavier Leggett. And if you want to keep it safe, you got to go Josh Allen. I mean, Allen, although the Panthers' defense has been pretty good, Josh Allen has never lost 3 games in a row. They're coming off a bye. They mean business, and I don't even hate the Allen to Mr. Dalton Kincaid. However, you do need to realize that Kincaid's got a big old Q next to his name. He's been a limited participant all week. Pretty sure oblique. So, again, he was inactive against the Falcons in Week 6 before the bye. Again, this could be maybe a Dawson Knox. You would have to feel that out in terms of when he is actually ruled out. But I don't even mind putting Cook in there. It's just a matter of finding the right names. But I'm really set on Bijan being in your lineup, Henry being in your lineup. If you want to do a different combination of maybe Bijan, isn't involved. Kirk's trying to prove himself. You got Saquon and Henry. You can't really go wrong with Bijan, Henry, Barkley, Chase Brown. Like, there's just so many running backs this week, and they're all really top-notch that I just don't really know where to put them. And there's a very good possibility that Henry, he could be owned. I don't think so. I feel like a lot of people don't like the Ravens offense after Lamar's ruled out. So it's interesting to look for. The other lineups that you could go for, again, I mentioned the Fields. Nobody's going to like this one, but CJ Stroud. For some reason, he could just ball out and bounce back at home. I don't know why, but that's a possibility. Again, another kind of question mark at quarterback. You want guys that are going to play consistently. And then again, Nico Collins is out, so do you really want Stroud in that lineup? The quarterbacks are definitely going to be a tough thing to go for. Daniel Jones, I don't even hate. Drake May has a tough matchup against Cleveland. Mayfield's playing a division opponent with no Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. Dak Prescott has a tough matchup against Denver. Lamar is out. Purdy's out. Do you just go with a Mac Jones? I don't think so, because Houston's defense is really good. It's just really questionable. Tua's not going to do anything against the Falcons. Tyrod Taylor's hurt. Is it Fields? There's so many questions, and it's a little bit iffy for what do you do for this week. Gabriel's not a bad option either, but again, he hasn't proved anything. The New England pass defense hasn't been very good. But honestly, the only other names you could really go for are backups. Andy Dalton has a good matchup against the Bills. Kirk Cousins has a great matchup against the Dolphins. Those are the guys you got to go for. The players with the crazy, good, favorable matchups. I wouldn't even mind doing a Joe Flacco. No Sauce Gardner. The problem is the Bengals could be up early in this game. I don't think Justin Fields is going to put up a good competition. The Bengals defense kind of been figuring it out. So, again, quarterback is I'm so hesitant to pick anybody. So I still think I'm going to roll with Andy Dalton because the Bills are going to put up points. The Panthers are most likely going to be down. And I would trust a veteran quarterback to just move the ball down the field. I know it's a question mark, and he didn't play the best against the Jets defense. However, Dalton he's a veteran, a full week under practice with the first team. I think he does a lot of good this week, and I don't even mind doing I feel like I'm rebuilding my lineup for you guys and just talking through how I kind of make these decisions. But I'm definitely going McMillan, Leggett, Dalton. I wouldn't be surprised, maybe, just maybe, it's a Tommy Tremble because of National Tight Ends Day. But again, a tough situation at tight end as well. So that flex, I really do think I'm going with 3 running backs. I don't trust the receivers this week. If I'm going with the receiver, it has to be Ibuka, just because again, Baker Mayfield has nobody to throw to. Ibuka kind of had that hamstring injury lingering. We didn't even know if he was going to play last week. But again, saw season high in targets, had a couple end zone looks. I don't mind Rachaad White for that game, but if this game's going to be anything of remotely close, because NFC South games are close, I do like Ibuka to put him in there. And maybe you just do a Baker, Ibuka, Otten. I don't even hate that. Now, I'm just going to keep changing this up. But again, there's a lot of different quarterbacks. I kind of gave you the main names, but Kirk is good value. Josh Allen is obviously safe, but he's probably going to be chalk. Maybe Fields is iffy. Those are kind of the iffy names. CJ Stroud, but I could see some potential there. Dak Prescott is pretty safe, but again, could be a tough matchup. I like Kirk. I like Mr. Dalton, but let's roll out the Baker lineup just to do something a little bit different. Baker could be chalk as well, but I feel like after a down week, people could be questioning, is he going to be able to do it? So I likely get for value. We could probably figure out, and I would maybe an Otten for the double stack for Baker. You got to love Otten. I mean, I feel like he's due for a touchdown. And then it's just, what is that other receiver going to be? Obviously, Joe Flacco is probably going to force it to this guy, Jamar Chase. Wouldn't be surprised if he has another 30-point week just because Flacco is going to feed him the ball. I don't mind George Pickens considering, if CeeDee Lamb is still there, that's the other stack. So out of these stacks that you got here, I'll just go through the quarterbacks. You got Josh Allen to Kincaid, but he's hurt. Lamar obviously out. I don't want any Hurts stock. You could do a Prescott, Ferguson, Pickens. I don't hate that in terms of the stacks. May, I personally don't want any ownership. I know he's a really safe option, but against Cleveland, that defense is really good. I'm not doubting the Patriots will lose that game. I think they'll just score a little less points, maybe 24. May might only have 1-2 passing touchdowns, so I just don't trust him to finish as a top 5 guy. Daniel Jones, yeah, he might be fine, but Jonathan Taylor might run all over. Bo Nix, don't want anything in that after last week. Kind of called the Bo Nix, actually, but it was a little scary until the fourth quarter, obviously. Caleb Williams could do a lot of good against the Ravens. Problem is, the Ravens are getting good on defense. I think they're starting to get back to what they were, last year. Flacco is definitely an option. You could go Flacco to Chase, and then have the 2 running backs I was talking about. I mean, you could really pick your poison with who you want at tight end. I think the sneaky play is Loveland, and you could go back to earlier in the video before I cleared out that lineup, but I really like that. Again, like I said, Stroud could be a good value. Fields could be a good value. Kirk Cousins could be a good value with Penix looking to be out, and Andy Dalton. So those are kind of the main – I know it's a lot to kind of process, but those are the main names that I would look for in trying to figure out what lineup do you want to stack together. Now, to try and fit everyone in here, I don't mind the Jamar Chase play. I really don't. But now, look at the salary. I mean, it's definitely going to be a tight fit. Defense this week, it might sound stupid, but defense is kind of important for DFS because if you pick the wrong defense that gets like 20 points, then you're kind of in a whirlpool. I feel like the Texans is safe no matter what because they're not going to let up more than 14, 20 points. They're probably going to have a couple sacks, maybe a fumble recovery. I mean, they had 4 turnovers against the Falcons last week. Maybe Mac Jones makes a mistake. I really love the Texans defense. But then this is where I do not want to have a highly owned quarterback or a highly priced quarterback this week. Baker Mayfield isn't even in the top 5 quarterbacks this week, or maybe he is. But my point being, he's 6,400. If you swap Baker out for a Dalton who's literally 2,000 less, you have so much more value to play at the flex. And I think Dalton does similar to what Baker does this week. So that's kind of what I'm looking for is what can you find for value? Maybe if it's not Dalton, you could sneak a Flacco in there for even 1,000 cheaper. So again, trying to find the value in this is probably the best bet. And even if you wanted to take Otten out, there's also value with Colston Loveland this week. I know it's not much of a difference because Otten is literally 400 more. But if you don't have that salary, if you have to take a risk on somebody, Loveland is the only tight end in the Bears room right now. Cole Kmet is dealing with an injury. So, again, 5,900. And even Swift, if Swift can't go, I think Monungai is going to be heavily owned. So, to even look at Flacco, I mean, I don't hate a Leggett McMillan just because I know the Bills are going to be up in that game. The only reason I don't like Flacco is because if the Bengals are up 20-3, they're not going to throw the ball that much. So that's kind of where I'm so iffy on wide receiver. It's just like, who is going to be that last name that you can get right? Because maybe it is a random 2 tight ends and it's a war. I just, this is where I physically have to say, I don't know. So go with your gut. Find the stack of the week. I think it's Dalton. That's the hidden gem that I'll give you. But I can't just finish this lineup. I think that's for you guys to do on your own. But honestly, I don't even hate that. If you want to go with the highest salary kind of thing, if you want to go with a good tight end and then maybe a cheap wide receiver, you could also try that. But again, you're getting kind of down into the weeds here. So here is the original lineup that I kind of showed you at the beginning of the video. These are kind of my main guys, and probably shouldn't show you what I'm thinking about submitting, but I think it's at least right to show you where my head's at. So you can switch multiple things around here, but I'm pretty locked in on Barkley. I know it's hard to believe because he's had so many bad weeks, but a lot of these guys are going to be heavy on Bijan, which is also in my lineup, but I feel like he has to be in your lineup because the matchup is just too good to turn down. So the main players that you kind of locking in here is Ibuka, Barkley, Henry, Bijan. Quarterback can be flipped around. Wide receiver can be flipped around. You can go Flacco, Chase, something else, but this is the best I could do for the value play. You could take McMillan out and you can have maybe Devontae Smith, but I don't want to own 2 Eagles personally when I think they're going to be up big and running in the second half. So again, I've gone on long enough. It's been a long monologue for what you should do for Week 8 for DFS. But I tried to give a brief overview of trying to be consistent with information. If I confused anyone, let me know how I can make it better and more appealing for the audience. But I trust the Texans defense as well. I would say that's pretty locked in. The 3 question marks, probably, obviously the big name is Loveland. I am big on Colston Loveland mainly because nobody's going to own him, and he finally got involved into the offense last week, and now there's no Kmet. So against the Ravens, a team you're probably not going to have the most success against, Loveland is a name to where I feel like he may not have 20 points, but he can easily get you 10, and I think that's all you need out of a tight end. If Loveland can get 15, I just think he has that upside as a rookie that he hasn't been used yet, and he just seems so due to me that value's got to get cranked up. So the other names you could probably switch around, I did a triple stack with Dalton, Leggett, and McMillan, mainly because I think the Panthers are going to be down big in this game against Josh Allen. You could do a Josh Allen as well, but again, you could switch Dalton around for a Flacco. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can construct the lineup. And obviously, if you're questionable on these 2 receivers, go for it. Change them around. But I think this is kind of the main stack. If you want me to just take out the questionable names, boom, there you go. Build your lineup around that. If you don't like Barkley, go ahead and take Bijan, put him in there. But that's kind of the main overview that I will give you. Apologies on the longer video, but I feel like I just had to, again, spew some information. So thank you guys for watching. This has been Mike Zanetti talking about the favorite sport, the best sport, in my opinion, in football. So let me know your comments in the comments. Let me know how you feel in the comments. But appreciate everyone watching. As always, Mike Zanetti. We'll see you in the next episode.